I just deleted Twitter last night. So I guess you're just gonna have to follow me on Blue Sky instead if you want to keep up with my updates and other shenanigans. Yeah. You guys have all seen this take before. If you've played all 3 of these games, then you've definitely seen this take before. Everyone has. It's been repeated so many times on the internet that people are outright sick of hearing it. But I don't think it's purely just because of repetition. Or how everyone completely leaves Persona 1 and 2 out of this meme. I think the reasons for this actually lie more within the overall discussion around these games, rather than the opinion itself. If I'm to be honest, I feel like people's actual attitudes towards these games might even kind of contradict the stated sentiments. I think the easiest way for me to explain is to tackle each of these 3 statements individually. When people say Persona 3 has the best story, I feel like I have to ask them why as a litmus test. Don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with this sentiment. Persona 3 does have my favorite story out of the Persona games. This includes 1 and 2. Something I've noticed is that the way the general fandom talks about Persona 3's story is totally different from how I talk about the story. When you ask most people why they think Persona 3 has the best story, they kinda just reiterate all the major plot points in the second half of the game. They don't really explain why. They don't even really seem to know why, if you get what I'm saying. Now, you could make a similar example out of the other Persona games too, but as someone who loves Persona 3, I am actually quite dissatisfied with how surface level the discussion tends to be. No one really seems to discuss how the story is told well. Something that I kinda regret not doing in my retrospective is demonstrating the excellent use of Greek imagery and the parallels to Greek tragedy storytelling techniques. I explained what Tartarus is in Greek mythology, and that's it. Thankfully, there are other videos that go into pretty deep detail about it. Everything from Persona mythology in relation to the characters using said persona, to even the way the characters are written like tragic heroes with fatal flaws. Oh, and if you even try to explain how the game uses the mechanics as a tool for the narrative, you'll be called delusional and written off as someone who just likes bad gameplay. God forbid you even insinuate the way the gameplay elements work off each other is cleverly designed. Yeah, any sort of ludo-narrative discussion about these games basically died when Persona 3 Reload came out. Despite how loved Persona 3's story is, people really like to oversimplify it. I think people are more attached to the condensed version of the story from the movies than the story in its entirety. They act like nothing happens in the first half of the game. I feel like everyone seems to forget that Persona 3 is not just a story about the mystery of Tartarus and saving the world. It's also largely a story about the personal journeys of the characters, and how the phenomenon of the Dark Hour acts as the catalyst for their growth. It honestly boggles my mind how much people will look at the character interactions happening on screen that are well spread throughout the game for the most part, then treat it like it's nothing, or that it's lesser than the big truth bomb dropped near the end of the game. I feel like a big factor as to why people fixate so much on the end of the game is Aigis. Don't get me wrong, she's not a terrible character by any means. Her character arc is just very backloaded, with most of it happening at the very end of the game, including her social link. Aigis is a very straightforward, easy to understand, walking, talking embodiment of the game's themes in their most basic sense. And yet not nearly as much attention goes to how the other characters demonstrate those themes in a more practical way. Everyone else in this game is out here learning how they want to live, but Aigis is only just learning what living even means. They're both important, but people put way more emphasis on the simplified form of the game's message, with very little regard to any of the nuance that comes with that message. You know, sometimes I think to myself, would anyone actually understand or appreciate Persona 3 nearly as much if Aigis wasn't in the game? Then a few seconds later I'll decide, nah, I don't want to think about that. Damn, you mean to tell me the characters are the most important thing driving the story? Speaking of which...
Guys, Persona 4 has the best characters because unlike C's and the Phantom Thieves, the investigation team actually feel like friends. Eat my fucking shit, bro.
Whoa! Joke! That was a joke!
It is honestly insane to me how people will say Persona 4 best characters, when so much of this fandom can't even agree on what they even represent. Man, for a game that's touted for its characters, people sure want to change them. You know, the game where all the characters decide for themselves who they want to be instead of having everyone else decide that for them. While I do think there is something to be said about the negative trans stereotypes in this game, I don't think it invalidates the message they were trying to get across with Naoto about infantilization, misogyny, and just being allowed to be a girl who likes action figures. Kanji is one that I feel more passionately about because I actually relate to him personally. You know that one kid in your class who looks at any kind of eccentric person and just can't help themselves? They cannot help but ask you, not the person themselves, "Hey, is that kid gay?" I went to Catholic school growing up, so that was every kid. Bro, if you even did so much as cross your legs while sitting, you'd be told by everyone to stop sitting like a girl. Man, fuck off. Maybe I'm just a straight guy who wants to watch Sailor Moon while crossing his legs eating Christmas tin cookies. I don't think Kanji being bisexual is off the table, but I feel like if the only thing you took away from his character arc is he's gay, you're kind of perpetuating the same stereotypes and standards of masculinity people kept pushing on him. You know, the people who caused his trauma to begin with. Then you've got Yosuke, who I'm pretty sure 99% of people want to be gay. And honestly, I'm not really opposed to it either. I think that would actually fit his character. Okay, that's nice and all, but does Persona 4 have the best characters, is what you're probably asking right now. If you want my opinion, Persona 4 has a really underrated cast of side characters. I can genuinely relate to some of these characters, and I can honestly say I might even like some of these guys more than the main cast, who were pretty hit or miss for me. It's honestly still funny to me how the 3 brain cells of the group cracked the case as soon as they stepped out of the room. What, you mean to tell me the peanut gallery was what held them back the whole time? I kinda went into this in my Persona 4 retrospective, but I think it's kinda telling how the most loved Persona cast also happens to be the one consisting of yes men. These guys almost never question you and just kinda follow you around all the time. I don't even think these guys even get upset at you if you're a dick to them in their social links, save for Naoto. The only time they ever argue with you is near the end of the game over whether to kill a man or not. Bro, this happens as early as the first arc of Persona 5. Meanwhile, you have the side characters like Ai Ebihara, whose link can be reversed, or characters like Shu Nakajima or Naoki Konishi being cold to you at first, before opening up about their traumas. These characters have very down-to-earth and believable stories. While some of them can be doormats in their own right, at least they're not constantly stuck to you like magnets. The side characters of Persona 4 are very often overlooked by the broader fandom. Bro, you cannot tell me Persona 4 has the best characters while ignoring the vast majority of them. These guys take up like half the game. Wait, but what about the other half? Saying Persona 5 has good gameplay is not an obscene statement to make, though I think a lot of us can agree that it's gotten to a point where people just kinda want everything to be like Persona 5. How do you remake the Persona games? Make them more like Persona 5. That's pretty much what most remake wishlists come down to in the grand scheme of things. We're apparently too creatively bankrupt to see beyond the scope of Persona 5's design. It's not so much that Persona 5 itself caused this, but rather people have caught themselves in this trap. It kind of feels like outside of story and themes, people view all the games in this series as a monolith. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone suggest stuff like how to make the weather mechanic more interesting in a theoretical Persona 4 remake, just as an example. It's mostly stuff like, Make the dungeons like Persona 5 palaces. No one's really thinking about how to expand on the ideas unique to the game they want to be remade. Persona 5 isn't just the new standard, it's just straight up the way people want everything to be done. You wanna know what's even funnier? Saying Persona 5 has the best gameplay, but the one boss where the player needs to use the mechanics optimally is the most controversial one. So Persona 5 has the best gameplay, but you can't appreciate it when the game even slightly pushes the player anywhere adjacent to slightly more advanced play? Okumura is pretty far into the game too. If you can't pull off a full baton pass chain with all the enemies in front of you weak to the same thing at this point, or fucking change the difficulty, I don't know what to tell you. This isn't even like challenge battle level stuff. In fact, I think this is only a symptom of a wider issue. The way Persona fans praise gameplay is weird. I just find it so backwards how Persona fans will praise the gameplay, but not ever appreciate or talk about the intricacies of the mechanics. Like, you don't have to get a doctorate in this stuff or anything, but come on. You can't gush over the gameplay and not say anything about the actual game design. And no, simply saying it's better than the older games is not actually telling me anything about what makes the gameplay pretty good. Ask a Kingdom Hearts fan why they think Kingdom Hearts 2 gameplay is so good. It's like night and day. It is such a crime that I've never seen a conversation about flow or momentum when talking about the baton pass mechanic. Flow is a pretty huge thing with me in turn-based combat. Does even half the player base know how to inflict technical damage? I know that sounds like a stupid question. And it is, but you'd be surprised how many people I've seen complain about something that they can literally just toggle in the config menu. How do you go an entire game without looking at the config menu at least once? That's like the first thing I do before I even start playing. I can't be the only one, right? You probably get the point by now. The obvious issue here is not the individual takes themselves. You may genuinely hold these opinions and feel very passionately about them, and I fully respect that. Most people wouldn't even find these statements to be offensive in of themselves. The issue is when people just start saying shit so repeatedly to the point where either everyone just sort of forgot what it even meant, or to the point where people are just saying it because that's just the set in stone status of these games. It almost kind of feels like people care more about maintaining some status quo than actually engaging with the ideas they're trying to push. Something I learned pretty quickly after making videos for a while on these games is that people really don't like when you go against the consensus. You could totally agree with everyone that Persona 3 has the best story, but the moment you even try to insinuate the gameplay isn't that bad, clearly you're just nostalgia blind! What if you like Persona 4's story the most? Inconceivable! Persona 4 is supposed to be the goofy Scooby-Doo game. It can't have the best story. God forbid the Phantom Thieves are your favorite Persona cast because that's cringe. Thankfully, this hasn't completely stagnated the discussion. There's no shortage of wild takes out there on the internet. That and other content creators have given us plenty of different perspectives to chew on. It's the whole reason I started to make videos too. I make it a point not to make videos on anything unless I have something new to add to the conversation. To be real with you, for the longest time I didn't think I had anything substantial to say about Persona 5 that hasn't already been said. But making this video kinda has me thinking, it might finally be time to start working on that retrospective. What was I thinking? With the way things are now, there's plenty that's been left unsaid for too long. Can't promise it anytime soon, but I'll try to have it out later this year. Been at this for 4.5 years. Here's to another 4.5, I guess. Thanks. Progress updates are free on my Patreon. All my bonus goodies only cost $1, and if you really hate your money, you can custom pledge more.